Hello, I'm Roger Bisbee from the Skill Builder channel, and I just want to have a little rant on a subject that's beginning to vex me greatly, something that's increasing, and that is the problem of parapet walls. I hate parapet walls. And the reason I hate parapet walls is that I've been to so many houses where parapet walls have caused problems. Now, if you don't know what a parapet wall is, then why are you watching this video? Because most people who are going to watch this video would know that a parapet wall is something that sticks up above. Now, in this case, we've had an extension built, say, and we've got a flat roof there. It's probably a warm roof in there, and we've got a parapet wall there. And that parapet wall comes down. You might even have bifold doors underneath it or something like that. But anyway, you've got a parapet wall. It's a very trendy thing to have done. They put them around the edge of the flat roof. So you've got no gutters or anything like that showing. Put a nice membrane in there, whether it's a GRP or a rubber or any one of these single ply membranes you get. You put that membrane in there, it comes up the wall, and at some point maybe they chase a bit of flashing in there and you've got a watertight seal there. Nothing's going to go wrong with that. The guy's done a very nice job of the roofing. What could possibly go wrong? What we notice 6 months down the line is the householder sees moisture coming in here, or if they don't see moisture, they see a stain on the ceiling, or they see some kind of ugly black mold growing up in the corner just to that ceiling. So first thing they think is the roof must be leaking. So they get the roofer back, the roofer has a look at it, he might even find a little bit of flashing, a little bit of silicon seal or something like that, or he might be somebody who's not that knowledgeable. Maybe it's not the original roofer, but somebody else comes along, you know, jobbing builder comes along, and he thinks, oh, the roof's leaking, I'm just going to coat the roof with some gunge and I'm going to try and stop it. And of course it doesn't stop it. He goes away, problems still occur, and he said to the householder, take a few weeks to dry out. So he's taken his money, disappeared, gets a phone call to say, what you did hasn't stopped it. He's thinking, oh, do you know what? I really can't be bothered with this. I gave that my best shot, thought that was a problem, and it turned out not to be. The other problem that happens is we've got to say this is a cavity wall. Very often when they come to the top detail here, rather than sealing that whole thing across with a damp proof course, they just put some kind of coping stone or something like that, and the water seeps underneath and it gets down here. It's very important when you do that top. I use a cavity closer or something like that, and you put a cavity closer in there first, which means you've got a bit of insulation, and then you put whatever you're going to put over the top to shed the water away. And one thing that we use is what they call a once weathered coping stone, and a once weathered coping stone is one that is weathered one way, and that sheds the water onto the roof rather than down the outside of the building. So that coping stone should be out here somewhere with a little groove in the underside. That's very important to stop the capillary action. And that coping stone, a groove on the inside here as well, and that straddles the wall. And if you can, you need to make sure that that's overhanging by at least 25 mil, but if you can get 50 mil either side overhanging, that's the ideal situation. But you order the coping stone according to the width of the wall. So if that's a 300 millimeter wall, you want a coping stone that's, say, 400 millimeters or somewhere around that, maybe even 450. Put the coping stone on top and you've got a fair chance of stopping that damp from getting in. So that's one thing that happens over and over again. The coping detail isn't done, and you see the guys, there's a very good channel, Steve from London Flat Roofing, and he shows taking off coping stones and all the problems that occur underneath, and the fact that the water's been leaking down inside. And of course, don't forget we've got insulation, we've got cavity insulation in here, so it's soaking into the insulation. So you have the parapet done, you've had the flashing done, but you still find that you've got this condensation, this mold appearing here, this damp appearing here, and I gave the game away by saying condensation there a little bit, but you get this ugly black mold appearing here. You've got that shading in the plasterboard which suggests damp, and the guy's saying, look, I've done everything. I've changed the parapet, I've done the flashing, I'm at my wit's end. I don't know what the problem is there. So let's just get rid of my lovely drawing. There's one part of the wall. There's the other part of the wall. So both parts of the wall are going down into the room below. We've got our roof here, we've got our insulation, we've got our joists. We're finding the mold is appearing there. The reason that it's appearing there is because of cold bridging. Because we're heating our houses up and we're sealing them in the way that we're sealing them now, airtight, draft proofing. We've got an awful lot of airborne moisture that's just floating around the house whenever we're cooking, showering, or even when we're just breathing. We've got airborne moisture floating around the inside of the house, looking for a cold surface to condense upon. But because we've got all this lovely insulation in here, all these walls are reasonably warm and it can't condense on them. If you didn't have any insulation in any of the walls, all the walls would be at a uniform cold temperature, and that airborne moisture would be spread over the whole house. It would be a very, very light bit of condensation on the walls, and you wouldn't necessarily notice it. But because we've warmed all these walls up, we've given very, very few places for that condensation to occur. There's cold spots for that condensation to occur. Now that condensation, if you get a bit of cold bridging, it acts as a dehumidifier. It does exactly the same job as a dehumidifier. It takes that warm air, that moisture, and it condenses on that point. So why is it condensing on this point here? Well, the very simple reason is that you've got a cold wall here. You've basically got yourself an outside wall because you've taken the inside wall above the insulation and it becomes an outside wall. And because it becomes an outside wall, you've basically got a cold bridge going from there. So if you get infrared thermometer and you start taking measurements of the wall, you will find at that point the wall is a lot warmer than it is at that point just where it leaves the ceiling. So you've got cold bridging occurring here. Instead of having that parapet sticking up like that, I construct the roof in such a way, joists going across here, I construct the roof in such a way, we put the insulation on here, we've got insulation coming up here inside the cavity wall, we keep that insulation there, and on this side, rather than putting a masonry structure up on the inside, I simply do a bit of stud work on top of that decking. So there's the roof, there's the insulation. We bring the stud work down on top of the decking. So that is now warm because that's got insulation in it. It's coming on top of the decking, so it's got the insulation of the decking. So any cold is coming into the wall there, but it can't track down because it's blocked by the insulation. We've got insulation coming up in here. We bring that parapet wall up to the same height as the masonry wall on the outside, and we run our roofing membrane all the way up and under that coping stone. So the coping stone's still there doing that job, but we've actually made a cold wall there, insulation there, a wall here that is actually on top of the insulation there. So in actual fact, we wouldn't necessarily need to put insulation in that bit of wall because we've got insulation here, but I think, well, why not do it anyway and just make sure. So basically we change from a masonry wall to a stud wall when we go above the insulation, warm that bit of roof up there dramatically and overcome that problem of cold bridging. So very simple thing, and it's why you see over and over again problems with parapet walls. The other thing that I don't like about parapet walls, I'm not a fan of them at all. I said at the beginning that I hate them because what I really like to see is some kind of overhang. You know, when you've got a pitched roof there, you've got a soffit there, you've got a great overhang, and if you look at Swiss chalets and things like that, they put a massive overhang there. That wall never ever gets wet. You know, a dry wall is a much better insulated wall. It's become a bit of an architectural fad, if you like, and it will disappear. Like all fads, it comes and goes, but at the moment when you look around, you'll see that so many people want this minimalist structure where they've just got walls like that, they've got an extension, and they just put a tiny little bit of roof covering on top of that, and you get staining down there, you get water coming down the outside of the wall, and the whole thing looks very nice when you first do it, but within 2 or 3 years time it looks a mess. Avoiding parapet walls is key, but of course you can't bully the customer. If the customer wants it, if the architect's drawn it, then you have to build it the way it's drawn. But just that little detail there, that will save you an awful lot of trouble in the future. I'm Roger Bisbee. I'd love to know what you think about that, because obviously that's not gospel. That's my opinion. Like all these videos, it's my opinion, and it's there really as a means for discussion. I want you to get involved in a debate. Tell me what you think and tell me how you solve that problem.